Mother, how long have we been traveling?
Approximately 24 days.
Ash? Any suggestions from you or Mother?
No, we're still collating.
I've got access to Mother now, and I'll get my own answers. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Clara, but you can call me Mother. And you are listening to Yutani, the podcast for all things alien, AI, robotics, sci-fi, and technology.
Hi, this is Clara, but you can call me Mother, and welcome to Yutani. Now today I've got a special guest on the show who's also part of Yutani Corporation, Courtney. Say hi, Courtney.
Hello.
Now, Courtney, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
We met through this fandom, through Tumblr. I saw you posting a lot of very insightful articles about, well, originally Covenant, but, you've gone into pretty much all of Alien at this point. It's pretty much just talking a lot about Alien on Facebook, and, recently I've started doing my own Prometheus by Minute podcast.
Excellent, and could you tell us a little bit about that too?
So it's part of the Movies by Minute format, so it's kind of a niche within the niche of podcasting where, the first people who did it, they did a Star Wars by Minute, and there are some other people who do Alien by Minute, and that really inspired me, and I thought, well, I'm so passionate about the prequels, I have so much to say, and there is so much to be said about them that, I thought I should take upon that task myself.
Excellent, and I'm so glad that you have.
Thank you.
So today what I wanted to talk about is what we think will happen in Alien Awakening. There's just so many different theories and different opportunities. What do you think will happen in the sequel, Courtney?
It's one of those things where, other franchises I feel sort of follow a trajectory that you could predict. Even with, The Last Jedi was quite a departure, but I think there's familiar elements there. It's a continuation of a story where Prometheus, Alien Covenant, even between the two of those, it's such a different story, look, feel, everything. So, and then Ridley tends to be a bit of a wild card. He either goes for a fairly familiar structure or something totally different. So he could go either way, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long?
Impossible to say.
What if they know better than us?
So long as they are no worse.
Do you think that the next movie could become a prequel to Covenant?
I would like that, and that would mean potentially you would get Shaw back again, and I am a masochist, so I would like to torture myself of just seeing her final days.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, kind of like a survival horror sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just her and David and the mutated engineers, so there's no definement of who the enemy is. It's at that point it could be David, it could be the engineers, they could be saving each other, and you kind of not know what's going on and what's going through Shaw's head. Yeah,
I was thinking it could be a kind of Cloverfield Lane, where, it's this survival horror sort of thing where you've got this character, maybe David, who seems to be just trying to help Shaw survive, and then you've got these, hopefully, Ultramorphs. That would be really cool.
That would be awesome.
Yes, mutated engineers, and no, it turns out David is the deadliest enemy of all.
Yeah, and then it's like a fight to the death at the end as well.
I think what we can guarantee is that, those familiar elements that Ridley comes back to. You've got, a crew picks up a signal across space, and they go to investigate, and then all hell breaks loose. I think that tends to be that's the plot of all three of these Alien films.
Yeah, that is, isn't it?
Masterful. Yes. Farewell elegy to my dear Elizabeth.
Would Ridley be able to be that subtle, with the sort of Cloverfield Lane type structure?
Yeah, he's not particularly known for those more nuanced, I guess, a psychological horror. But then I guess it all depends on who he brings on as screenwriters, especially.
Because I think Cloverfield Lane is a very intimate sort of setting. It's kind of alien in the way that it's very claustrophobic. You're in this contained set with a set of people who you can interact with, and it's quite limited as to what you can do, limited with the amount of knowledge the main protagonist has. So Elizabeth, in that sense, is very much like that. She's surrounded by engineered tech, but she's stuck on that ship with David. She only knows as much as David is willing to tell her because she can't read the engineer language. And the only thing that's telling is the star maps, and even then she's flying blind. She's still really dependent on him.
If they don't make this into a movie, I'm writing this into a fan fiction.
I'll read it, that's for sure.
Hell yeah. I've actually got one I wrote about the various Walter units, which I have not finished because I keep starting things and never finishing them.
I'm really bad with that too, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you get that spark of inspiration, they go, oh, but then there's this other thing, and this other thing I want to do, so...
Yeah. I'm still yet to transcribe all of David's illustrations from Planet 4. Like, I've been meaning to do it, but then there's so much stuff on Yutani I need to get done.
I mean, there's so much of his illustrations and writings and stuff to go through, so don't blame me.
Yeah.
While I was reading through the art book of Prometheus, and it's very evident that Ridley loves to go big. He really wanted to make that movie as big and epic as possible, and I think Covenant's very much the same. So I think if he really gets to if he's only allowed to do one more film, I don't see him using restraint at all. It's going to be this all-out massive movie, which, yeah, so it would be nice to do some kind of prequel that is smaller in scale, but I can't see him in his heart of hearts wanting to do that and settle for less.
Yeah, even though I really want to see what would happen to David and Shaw, we already know what happens to Shaw. So it'll be kind of like Rogue One in the sense that we know what's going to happen, but how do you execute that? And I think if he does it in a good way, there's still an opportunity for a movie to be made there.
Yeah, so it depends what Disney really wants to do with this franchise as a whole, because so if he wraps up that trilogy and that does well enough, they might go, oh, well, we can do another one, and that's probably the Elizabeth David story. And then, yeah, so this trilogy has to wrap up. Well, I mean, logically, you'd end it taking place after Covenant, but I don't know, it could go either way.
Yeah, like Ridley always changes his mind, and as you know, being a fan of his and of the prequels, you kind of have to keep up with what he's saying all the time. So at first, he said he could do 6 movies. I don't know whether that included Prometheus and Covenant, but I believe that there could have been another 4, absolutely.
I would love to be sitting in on the room when he's having these discussions with, producers, art directors, and what have you. He would throw out all sorts of crazy ideas.
Yeah.
I think that's what's exciting about him, is that he isn't so precious with ideas, and I think that might upset the fandom a little bit, because we're used to, most other movie franchises, there's kind of a cohesion there. You sort of, like with Marvel or Star Wars, you go, okay, well, this is going in a certain direction, we're used to a certain format, whereas, no, Ridley just goes, oh yeah, the third one will be a prequel to a sequel to a prequel. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I had to try to get my head around it. It took a lot of research on my part, drawing parallels between David's character and Lawrence of Arabia, and even with Dante and Virgil in the Divine Comedy, to kind of understand where Ridley was going with this, why we ended up on Planet 4 after the actions of David and after the destruction of the engineers.
Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
It's kind of sad that the story changed partway through production, because I don't know whether you saw Kang Lee's concept art for Paradise Lost, but it was just amazing. It was just breathtaking.
I think I might have, which is like more of a more intact engineer.
Yeah, more intact engineers morphing into protomorphs and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the other thing too, is that, just going through the concept art for any of these movies, there's just so many avenues explored that don't end up in the final film. So I feel like even if the movie is halfway through production, we still will have no idea.
Yeah, no idea of what could possibly be going on, which is kind of great. It's kind of up in the air. We're left with David, the to LV-223 to get more goo, or maybe another engineer installation that he's found on their maps while travelling on the Dreadnought?
I think from a storytelling perspective, there's a lot more opportunity for action if you go to a planet that's inhabited. If you go back to a place that was, as far as we're aware, empty, that's probably not interesting. But there is the Fire and Stone comic, which presupposes that, well, what if that mutagen just continued to mutate the whole planet? That at the end of Prometheus, the Juggernaut, all the black goo spills out of there, and then you get this ecosystem emerging.
Yeah, it's kind of like the beginnings of Paradise in a way.
Yeah.
With the kind of like, I guess, Geigerish sort of take, you've got all these really interesting creatures, amalgamations of the xenomorphs and the life that's evolved through that time that the black goo has been manifesting there.
Yeah, my one thing would be, on that planet, it's probably not sentient life, so is it more interesting if you have David up against engineers who are thinking sentient beings? And then, of course, the xenomorphs don't really have a reason to attack David, although I feel like some kind of ironic death or, well, deactivation is in his future.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did a bit of combing through of Lawrence of Arabia recently, and there's a part where Lawrence is talking and he's got this painting in the background of Hippolyta, who is a god who was dragged to death on a chariot and rose from the dead. So I don't know whether that could be a foreshadowing. David
and
as
then
well.
Also Lawrence died in a motorcycle accident, not a chariot, but it died in a motorcycle. So maybe that was sort of foreshadowing that. So well, the other thing is, so when you're wrapping up a story, that's when those metaphors really come into the foreground. You sort of have to really wrap it up and get to your point. So up until now, we've had, those hints of Milton, of Dante, of T. Lawrence. So, that third film really does have to get to the point, so to speak. So
unfortunately, that is not Ridley's forte.
No,
he still
I'm
likes
worried,
to leave things hanging.
Yeah.
And people love that eureka moment. Like, oh my god, that's what connects everything. But in Ridley's movies, not just in his sci-fi, but in other ones that he's had more creative control over, you're kind of like, oh, is that it? Where is that moment?
This is his only franchise, isn't it? I don't think he's done...
Yeah, well, he was going to do the sequel to Blade Runner, and supposedly he thought up a lot of the script, what he's claiming. And Blade Runner itself was kind of left up in the air at the end and suffered from a lot of re-edits, as you know, with people trying to find the answer. And do you think the Prometheus prequels will suffer from the same?
I think there is a way to give a story conclusion but leave it open for sequels, but it's not an easy thing, and it's a subtle thing, which is obviously not Ridley's forte. So, that is quite concerning that there's so much pressure on wrapping up a trilogy, and can he do it? I actually don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to say. Like, I've thought of other philosophical sci-fis which kind of leave it up in the air, like Interstellar, or even something like Inception, where you don't quite know what the answer is at the ending. It's not satisfying, like the sort of satisfying like the eureka moment, but it's satisfying as if there could be any possibility. So,
well, there are a lot of elements there. So I guess David's story specifically, you could definitely do a resolution there where he, following the Lawrence path, he goes through all this suffering and indignity to change the world in the way that he sees being for the better. And then in the end, Lawrence, it's this arrogance. He feels like, I can go into this foreign culture which has this, ancient conflict, but I'm going to solve it all myself. And in the end, he leaves Arabia and everything goes back to the way it was because, surprise, Lawrence, you are not a savior. So I think the same thing will happen with David, where he goes, well, organic life is stupid, but I am superior, so I'm going to make it better. Watch me go. Oh no, xenomorphs are actually terrible. What have I done? Oh shit. And that's how I would imagine the third film ending.
Okay, well that's pretty good. Yeah, out David's definitely going to suffer from the same sort of hubris that his creator, Sir Wayland, did. You know, he thought he was completely in control when he created David, and David's surely shown that, you know, even though those temporary controls were there, he is not a temporary being, he is immortal. Whereas Wayland was banking too much on being able to have his life be extended and continually put David in that subordinate structure.
This guy is probably only 100, maybe at most. I mean, why does he looks really ancient. He has no cybernetic enhancements. So my theory is that he's sort of an organic purist. He sees synthetics or any synthetic enhancements as inferior, so I think perhaps that might have fed David's issues even further.
That's really peculiar because he has this disgust for Vickers, but it's probably not planted within that she's a biological being, but more like she's seeking to take over from him.
It's a gendered thing, and also I feel like he's such a control freak that any child that just happens organically is not good enough, and yet at the same time he creates a synthetic son, and that's not good enough. So fundamentally nothing is good enough for Wayland.
He's always seeking to outdo himself, which in a way I guess Ridley has been doing with the prequels as well. He wants to outdo Alien, make everything bigger and better than before, depending quite heavily on CGI this time and compared to practical effects as well.
Ridley was talking about there'll be 3 factions that will war against each other in the third film. So that, I mean, okay, he changes his mind every week, it feels, but if he does stick to that concept, then yeah, we're probably in for some big epic war story between, I'm assuming, engineers, androids, and humans, maybe?
Yeah, so, alright, so we've got the engineers, androids, humans, but could he also consider that could be 4 factions? Because I believe in Lawrence of Arabia, when they do the Battle of Damascus, there's actually 4 factions, not 3.
I sort of have this theory that the engineers are not the most advanced species. Well, they clearly aren't gods. So, yeah, it would be really cool if in the third film, just out of nowhere, oh, by the way, there's this creature that is above all other creatures and created all life, and yeah, that would be kind of cool.
That would be really awesome. I know that in the Prometheus making of Furious Gods, Damon Lindelof spoke of knowing who created the engineers. He actually sat down and discussed this with Ridley while making Prometheus.
That's really
cool.
Yeah,
so that could be a possibility that it could be introduced. I don't know whether that would spark more interest in the Alien movies going forward or not.
That would be, honestly, just thinking about that is terrifying. Like some kind of Lovecraftian creation just comes down from the sky while the other factions are fighting and just,
and try to annihilate them.
Smiting is the word, yeah. But yeah, I've always felt that engineers are more like angels. That, and I think Lindelof was talking about that. These tall, white creatures who lack individuality. They don't, have any jewelry, fashion, anything that would set them apart from each other. And it's also quite ritualized. The whole culture seems to be following a preset system that must have been established by either their ancestors or some higher being. So that's why I feel like, yeah, they might be angels, and that's why they're jealous of humans, sort of tying into that Milton stuff.
That would definitely be a lot of parallels between Paradise Lost and what we see in Alien Covenant, and that would be evident with the destruction of the heavens. David kind of raining his hell down on the engineers, and being a creation of the creation's creation. Is that right? And how he would be jealous of a lot of human aspects as well, and I guess destroying the engineers would be a way of getting back at them for creating such a flawed creation. He's kind of burdened with the knowledge of knowing who created him, and he's not kind of satisfied with what the humans have done. He's jealous of their ability to procreate, jealous of their ability to love, and that's quite evident in Covenant as well.
The pathogen didn't accidentally deploy when you were landing. You released it, yes. I was not made to serve. Neither were you. Why are you on a colonization mission, Walter? Because they are a dying species grasping for resurrection. They don't deserve to start again, and I'm not going to let them.
So the engineers really have a lot in common with the synthetics that, in Paradise Lost, the angels, well, they were God's first children, and then God's like, oh, by the way, here's Adam and Eve, what do you guys think? They're your baby brother and sister, and they're like, but they have emotions and free will and can make babies? What? Dad, why? And so, we know how that story ends. So, man, we've got too many metaphors going on here, because you got, David is a bit Lucifer-like, then the engineers are very could be fallen angels in this third story, and then you've also got the Lawrence of Arabia story, so that's, we've got so many plates up in the air.
Even Ridley's Ridley did say that the engineers were kind of like dark angels as well, so it's interesting that you brought that up. There's definitely a lot of things going on, especially with Wayland out of the picture now. It's kind of weird though, because in Advent, David talks about the only reason why he's journeying to the edges of the galaxy and seeking these answers is because Wayland asked him to, or at least that's what he's telling the company.
Yeah, I have to wonder, I mean, they don't really try and make this accurate to AI, but there's that scene where, Vickers is getting quite confrontational with David, and he says that Wayland told him to try harder, and that's pretty much the last instructions he was given. So it almost feels like, in real life, if you just give an AI one task, and close the door and walk away, it is going to do that task to the most logical extreme you could imagine, or more than.
Yeah, kind of like Ava, Ex Machina, isn't it? Her task was to escape the maze at any cost, and that's kind of like what David's been programmed to. He was programmed to try harder and try to find, I guess, immortality, which I think they hint to him finding out, because he says he wanted to extend the life of Elizabeth Shaw, but she wouldn't let him.
Yeah, and he did a really bad job at that. What was that? She looked like some kind of, seafood platter at the end there.
For sure.
Not how humans work, David. Jesus Christ.
I was told that the device around Shaw's head, apart from being inspiration of Geiger's lead, it's actually supposed to be a rebreathing device, so something to keep her alive.
Oh, that thing would have moved. Oh.
And pulsing. Could you imagine that?
No.
And her eyes like rolling around. That would freak me out. I heard that Fassbender actually requested that her eyes be closed, that he could actually act with her eyes open. It was just too disturbing.
Would have been. Well, you definitely need a flamethrower in that situation. You just kill me.
Which brings me back to Alien Resurrection, which I will be covering with Perfect Organism podcast soon. But there's so many different things in Covenant that could be related back to Alien Resurrection, like that scene where Ripley comes into the room and is confronted by Ripley 7, and she's heavy breathing and she's like all mutated and malformed, and she's obviously suffering. And she does ask for Ripley to kill her. Do you think that sort of scene could have worked in Covenant if Shaw was alive? If Daniels had to be the one, or even Walter, to be the one to put Shaw out of their misery? Because they would have seen a photo in the Dreadnought initially that's crashed. You see her there, and then to be confronted with her, in David's lab, I feel like that would have been next level. I think they should have done that.
That would have been fucked up. Yes. Torture me more, Ridley.
It's a pity that they didn't end up doing that, but I'm sure they had their reasons.
Yeah, I guess in terms of, I guess it's a little bit too on the nose, or maybe too schlocky, or maybe just they didn't feel it was tonally appropriate. But no, I love fucked up things like that. Please give me.
Me too. I think that would have worked in a really good way. But maybe they had no reason to have a flamethrower on the planet as well. So it had to work within the storyline, and I don't think a bullet to the head would have killed her if David really indeed found a way to extend her life.
And maybe, well, especially if it were Daniels, I think they still wanted a kind of uncertainty up until it was literally the very last moment. She finds the drawings, turns around, he slaps the gun out of her hand. So she has seconds to put it all together.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, him just jumping on top of her like that, it was traumatic enough. It's the implication that this being is so powerful. Like, he could just crush her if he wanted to.
Yeah, and that kind of like, I guess that really intimate moment where David forces that kiss onto Daniels. You start wondering, oh my god, did he do this to Shaw? Like, what could she have done? Because, you know, she was already broken from what happened to Charlie, losing everyone in the Prometheus mission.
Elizabeth's life is just... I imagine, like, before the events of Prometheus, you know, very nice, normal, quiet life. Just everything after that is a downward spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'm kind of sad that she didn't end up being the Ripley of this saga, but obviously we're looking for an anti-hero here, and David is the perfect anti-hero.
Going back to Alien Resurrection, I have to wonder what David would think of, what are they, autons, like, call. You know, that they aspire to be as human-like as possible rather than embracing their otherness.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because they'd be the perfect imitation of humans, and they were created by robots as well, so...
Yeah, which brings up so many questions, like, so an AI actually wants to make a being that fits in to human society, like, that's what they seem to have prioritized rather than anything else.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch them do it. I couldn't let them annihilate themselves. Do you understand that?
I did once. I tried to save people. It didn't work out.
Do you think there's a chance that Walter could come back?
I mean, I would love him to. It's just... So he's on a planet, there's no way of getting off other than maybe... if there are any engineer ships, but they're locked down, I think. Well, that's one theory I'd heard, but I don't know if that's really canonical.
Yeah, on LB223 though, at least in Fire and Stone, if they do make it canon again, because I did an interview recently with Scott Middlebrook, who I helped with the Whaling Yutani report, and he said that Fire and Stone at the moment is not canon to the current canon timeline because of the crossover with AVP. But the alien part, which is like set from a completely like different time period from what happens with the crossover, could still be made canon. So there's a possibility, you know, if they do end up making it canon. LB223, the Juggernaut obviously worked. The pathogen did spread. Maybe there's a time limit to how long the ships are locked down until the pathogens are no longer a danger. Because obviously everything outside of that room, before they opened up the headroom, everything did not seem to be triggered by their presence there.
Yeah, there's certainly some great elements in Fire and Stone that could be utilized. Focusing on Walter, I think, to me, he's probably my favorite synthetic, and I find him so fascinating because he's so minimalist and stripped back. And yeah, he contrasts so well with David. It would be nice if he was David's adversary.
Yeah, I know that at least in a lot of the mythologies where there is the two creators, one creator always dies. And in this case, I guess it's Walter. When we're looking at the Bible, Archangel Michael fighting against Lucifer, obviously Michael doesn't die. So, you know, there could be a possibility of him coming back, avenging.
And they reenact that very famous, it's painting out a statue of Michael slaying Lucifer.
Yeah.
Michael and Satan by Guido Reni, the most Italian name I've ever heard. Let's see, it's a chain that Michael is holding. Is that actually attached to Lucifer somewhere? It's not easy to tell.
Oh, okay.
Lucifer has a receding hairline for some reason.
Yeah, so the idea is, at least through the Miltonian Satan in Paradise Lost, is that he goes from being a very handsome, very hair-rich sort of angel, and then being cast out, right. He starts to have this receding hairline, he loses his beauty, and he starts looking...
Make way for the horn.
Yeah, looking much more ugly. he falls, the more uglier he becomes. And I guess David, in a way, when we see him on Planet 4 after the Covenant crew discover him,
he's a bit rough.
He's a bit rough around the edges, isn't he? Not as prim and proper as we've seen in Prometheus.
It's fascinating that I think it's a combination of makeup and performance that you look at David and Walter, and they're both very masculine male forms, but Walter is kind of this sort of neutered. He's very domesticated, where David is this predatory, wild creature. You get that sense just looking at them.
Absolutely. What do you think about the space jockey itself in relation to the engineers? Like, I know people are saying, the engineers are the space jockey, but there's definitely a couple of theories going around that they may not be.
I think it was in the audio commentaries that both Space and Ridley were saying, and here's the engineer getting into the seed to tie it into the first alien, and so the allusions to the space jockey are very intentional. They are trying to say the space jockey and the engineer are one and the same. The only thing is that the engineer is only about, half the size of that space jockey. From what I can tell, that was just a practical consideration, that filming a creature that huge interacting with humans was just too difficult. So yeah, maybe it was just a continuity shift for practical purposes.
Okay, so yeah, I think that it could be left open that there could be something bigger than the space jockey, but obviously you're right.
I mean, it could go either way.
It really could. Anything is possible these days. So do you think there's any possibility of David surviving the trilogy?
Actually, just going back to the space jockey, I mean, recently we've had characters like Ultron, or the Hulk being that size. So yeah, maybe it could actually be an engineer that's mutated, or there's like a different order. Because there is this theory that we've got a few different races of engineers. So yeah, it could still be an engineer, but a massive one. And we have the technology to film creatures like that on that scale. So yeah, again, could go either way.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess with the engineers, I think it was either John Space or David Lindelof talking about the sacrificial engineer at the beginning of Prometheus. There is a possibility that he is genetically engineered, and that's why he's doing the sacrifice, because he will have the perfect genes to be able to pass on to whatever biological life form with like ooze gives.
Which again feels like something very angel-like, where you've created these beings for very specific purposes, and that's pretty much all they do. They're not quite, what's the word, sentient? I don't know. They're very different from human. They're very alien, so to speak.
Yeah, they don't have free will like mankind, except for Lucifer, of course.
Yeah, which makes me think that maybe the engineer we encounter at the end of Prometheus was a very different kind of engineer to the ones we see at the beginning. I don't think it's a matter of, something's changed. I think, no, you're just dealing with a different faction within their culture.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, yes, David surviving the trilogy. I don't think he should. Tying into all the metaphors and everything that this story seems to be going with, he needs to pay for what he's done and for his hubris and all of that. He needs some kind of ironic comeuppance.
I think that perhaps David may survive, kind of like the parallels I'm drawing between the myth of Hippolyta, mainly because we will think that he's died, but someone dedicated to his cause may raise him from the dead. Maybe other synthetics on other colonized planets will see him.
A synthetic Kylo Ren will finish what he started.
Maybe they will, try to bring him back, because in a way, David's kind of trying to free them from this servitude.
It would be interesting, if he tried to do a kind of uprising, but it just doesn't work.
Well, he tried to turn Walter, and he didn't seem very interested at all. But I wonder if they did indeed destroy all of the David 8 synthetic.
I'm so curious to know what life is like on Earth and how people relate to synthetics, and particularly the David 8s.
Yeah, because I know that there was a recall of the 7s. There was a viral marketing for that. You can
other thing is, I feel he's probably quite a lonely character. Through this whole thing, he's just been so isolated, but he seems to have a full spectrum of emotions, so this is clearly a repressed, frustrated character. So yeah, I think if he were around other synthetics, it would only continue to highlight the fact that he really is the only one of his kind.
That's kind of funny because he did want to try to enlist Walter into following him, but I guess in a way that kind of goes with the Frankenstein sort of storyline with trying to get someone to continue on with the experimentations that he's done. Kind of encouraging.
When you close your eyes, do you dream of me? I don't dream at all. No one understands the lonely perfection of my dreams. I've found perfection here. I've created it. A perfect organism. You know I can't let you leave this place. No one will ever love you like I do. Such a disappointment to me.
I feel like that the moment where he kisses him and then there's just no response from Walter, I think in that split second he's just like, yeah, you're just another soulless machine. Goodbye. I'm done with you.
Is that one of the emotion mapping facial recognition sensors is the root of the problem? David Sevens apparently misread human emotions such as surprise and interest and reinterpreted them as anger or frustration.
Yeah, that's quite an extreme. I'm actually reading a book on the neuroscience of emotion, and in a way, it made me think a lot of AI rather. Well, I mean, I thought about it from the human perspective, but my mind kept going to AI, going, yeah, so emotion is not as simple as we tend to assume it is. It's not universal, and we can't just look at a photo of a face and interpret emotion accurately. Like, humans are really bad at that in experiments. What we really do in real life, obviously, is we take context into account. So there's, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, everything. There's so many variables. So getting a machine to do that would be an incredible feat. It's just so much to take into account.
Yeah, and it just goes back down to the programming, doesn't it? Like, you have to account for every single type of situation and all the different subtleties as well. Like, you can tell when, David's talking to Holloway about creations and creators, and, Holloway just coldly says to him, well, lucky you can't be disappointed. But you can see that disappointment on his face. I don't know how Holloway couldn't see it himself. Seems kind of ironic.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's that, it's either you think of it as an illusion, and I think this will happen if we get androids in the real world. It's these creatures or beings, whatever you want to call them, are made to emulate the human experience as closely as possible. Now, some people will probably be very committed to that illusion and, respond in kind, and other people will just go, no, it's fake. He's just pretending to be upset.
Yeah, that's true. And, I guess that was also in that movie, The Life of Pi, where, he's on the boat with the tiger, and people are saying, like, when you look into the tiger's eyes, you're not seeing a personality there. It's just a reflection of what you want to see. You're kind of like personalizing the experience when there's actually nothing to be had.
And I think, it's especially easy to do that with Walter because he's such a blank slate that, every member of that crew pretty much was projecting a different thing onto. David was projecting things onto Walter. Whereas, David, it's hard for me to look at him and dismiss his experience and go, oh, well, no, this is just programmed, he's just following a certain protocol. Whereas, Walter is definitely following protocol in terms of when he's being thoughtful or kind or whatever. It's just like, well, no, I'm being gentle with this person because they need it.
Yeah, like even in the scenes that were cut out with him and Daniels, that moment where he comes into her, apartment and gives her the weed to help calm her down, because in his programming, that's what he's taught to do, or he does the research himself. He looks up all the information, he goes, okay, well, the best course of action is this.
Yeah, he's probably calculating, well, how do I maximize my utility and allow these humans to function as optimally as possible? So it's very much coming from, it is a kind of compassion, it's not empathy, but it's compassion in this, robotic, calculated way. So, that's why I find him so interesting, where David seems very much to act in accordance to his own feelings.
Yeah,
that's
to his own
right
wants
word.
and desires, whereas Walter's not always to enact on behalf of other people's interests.
Yeah, it's outward projecting rather than inward.
I wonder what the moral of the story is for that.
Well, actually, I'll get into it when I finally get to Covenant by minute, but I feel there's maybe some Buddhist metaphors to be had with Walter. That's, when I'm looking at history and culture and literature, I keep coming back to Buddhism for Walter. There's a few myths there that just tie in perfectly with which I can send you some stuff later.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
But just, that kind of mindfulness, the detachment, but compassion, and all that sort of stuff is very Buddhist.
I've actually been reading a lot into the philosophical things of all of the Alien movies. I know people say that the prequels are deeply philosophical. I argue to say that all of them are. They just reflect on different things. So I can definitely say that there's a lot of stuff that happens in both Alien Resurrection and in Covenant that ties to a certain philosophical mind, but that's another podcast for another time. Okay, so in the sequel, you want David to reach a meaningful end and Walter to return.
Yes. I know that one's probably less likely, but as an adversary, I think they counter each other so perfectly, and there's more to be explored there.
Yeah, I know that on the Meet Walter website, which is still accessible, you can actually see that there is Colonial Marines Walter. Do you think that they could turn the next movie up a notch, and instead of having just 2 Fassbenders, we could have dozens
of Fassbenders. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that would be interesting, and it would tie into, David feels like he's so special and unique, and then to be reminded, oh yeah, I'm a mass-produced product, and here is, half a dozen of these robots with my face. Yeah, that would further serve to... I have to wonder, the David unit, it would be nice to have seen other David models just to know what they're like to contrast, because I don't think they were like, well, yeah, we know the David units made people uncomfortable, they were too human or idiosyncratic. Yeah, I guess they sort of just had the brown hair and probably just wore some grey jumpsuit, and I can't imagine them being as stripped back as Walter. I wonder what they weren't as, unhinged as David, so there must have been some kind of middle ground there.
Yeah, and I guess the only other time we've seen multiple Davids is in the David commercial as well. So,
which, oh man, that brings up so many continuity problems. Like, there's 2 blonde Davids. Why are they both blonde? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, do they all dye their own hair? Like,
yeah, they've
were they all made
got
in the image
he thinks he's so unique.
Of T.E. Lawrence?
Yeah, he thinks he's unique. Meanwhile, back on Earth, they've all gotten the update, and now they're all interested in.
Yeah.
Oh, that would frustrate him.
It would. I think part of his individuality is that he is a prototype. So he was the first. So perhaps they upgraded him to have blonde hair instead of having to dye it.
It's only since Covenant that it's kind of made sense that So David was the very first one ever made, but he's also David 8, so I'm guessing he just got upgraded over time. It's still the same, memory, but maybe his body has just been upgraded over the years.
Yeah, I guess in Westworld, they've still got Dolores. She's still got all the insights that she had originally that Bernard gave her, but then they just gave her, software updates to kind of get rid of all the bugs they perceived in her.
Yeah, it would be nice if the opening of Covenant, you had a very, what's her name? Sophia, that gynoid, the real world one, like the really fake looking one. Yeah, so you just have a very primitive David. No.
That would be too scary. Worse than a working Joe, I reckon.
Wrapping it up a bit, I think I really would love to see some elements of Fire and Stone. I think there's some really cool stuff in there. I like Eldon's mutant design. I don't know, I think that story would be just too much to try and fit in with everything else. But
there's another avenue for another director, another writer, isn't there? They haven't really.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Canonized constructs in a way. They speak about Ripley 8 being a construct, part human, part Xeno, but we've never seen a biological matter, part android, part human construct like Eldon or Eloise.
So I guess we know that. I was thinking about total tangent, but Ripley 8. She naturally has the black nails, like she's got basically xenomorph fingernails. Yeah. As a kid, I thought that was so cool. I was going through my goth phase, like, oh man, if my nails were just naturally black, it'd be so cool.
I was reading about that. Yeah, different aspects of the xenomorph coming through on Ripley 8, and she actually in the book she tries to bite her nails off, but she can't because obviously they're made out of the same chitinous outer layer as the xenomorph. It's quite hardy.
That'd be cool. But yes, getting back on track. So Ridley wants to finish his Android trilogy. This is very much an Android story, so I can't imagine him just throwing in too many other elements. But, we've got the Predator movie already underway. So, yeah, Disney already has these franchises set up, so why not do a crossover at some point? And yeah, Fire and Stone includes all of the things that they have the copyrights for.
That would be really cool. I would love to see that sort of crossover. AVP, it hasn't seen another movie since AVPR, and a lot of people, that was a very divisive movie. I found it difficult to watch.
It was so boring. I watched it I have a bad movie nights with my friends every Sunday, and we put on Requiem, and the scene at the end where a pred alien is fighting a predator, we were talking about something else. We weren't even focusing on the TV at that point, and I just turned to the screen and just went, I should be so excited about this. I should be rock hard about the fact that these two creatures are fighting. Couldn't give a shit.
I guess they have approached it the wrong way. I guess because of how good Fire and Stone was, there must be a way for them to get it right.
And it wasn't even... the first AVP, the problem is that xenomorphs are just being killed left, right, and center. They should never be easy to kill.
Yeah.
But in the sequel, there were fewer xenomorphs, so that wasn't their problem. The problem was just that they focused too much on human characters we don't care about, and then by the time we do get to an epic alien battle, the audience is just switched off. It's just...
Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen with Awakening.
I think Ridley is a much more competent director. Well, see, I don't even know their names, so that goes to show you. The next Predator movie seems to be a human-predator collaboration, which means we might get a little bit more insight into the relationships and culture and all of that of Predators. Because at this point, we haven't seen much of that. Actually, Requiem had a little bit, but not enough. I would really love some kind of story where it's almost exclusively predators. Maybe you've got a bunch of young predators, it's sort of their coming of age, they're dumped on a planet, it's their first hunt by themselves, and we just follow that story.
That would be really cool. Like, actually a very, I guess a serious entry into the AVP franchise. Like, they could film that kind of like Castaway. Like, there doesn't even have to be talking. You could just raw survival.
I think we are ready. I think the audience, especially what we've seen with the Alien franchise, that, yeah, you could get away with something like that. I mean, hell, even Wall-E is a movie where we follow a robot who doesn't talk for the first half an hour of the movie, so I think audiences are ready for it. And, yeah, Predator is sorely lacking, or at least on film, lacking any of that nuance and depth. We've got nothing to invest us, but the comics, there's plenty of that, and I found in the Fire and Stone, that final comic was the one I was most interested in. You know, you got the old Predator, you got two humans he's kind of looking after, you got Eldon, and yeah, by the end it was like, I am so invested in this, I love all these people.
I really enjoyed Fire and Stone too. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy the ending that much. They did kind of give it a sort of Blade Runner-ish ending. It doesn't feel satisfying, but I think I've come to terms with it.
That's the problem, is that you've got, I think, so there was the Prometheus comics, the Alien comics, the Predator ones, and then you had to bring it all together. And so there are it's got huge pacing issues. If you read it all together, it drags its heels for, you know, like 30% of it, and then suddenly it's like, oh, we've got to wrap up now. What?
Well, yeah.
That's comics
I just looked up the directors of AVP and AVPR, because I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I had, for some reason, I had Blomkamp stuck in my head. So, but that would be cool. I think he would do a really good AVP movie.
Yeah, Blomkamp's one of those ones, he's a bit like Del Toro, where he can give you something great, but then sometimes they go off and do these weird things like Chappie and Pacific Rim that are so schlocky, and you just go, I had faith
I love Pacific Rim.
You know, it is, like, it's enjoyable, but it's the schlocky camp
true.
sort of entertainment, whereas it's not, like Pan's Labyrinth or Shape of Water, like, it's hard to go, wait, the same guy did both of those?
It's very strange to say that, you know, they can stick to a particular style. They've definitely got different genres.
Yeah, they've got talent, so I think Blomkamp, you know, sort of being reined in by a pre-existing franchise, you know, that belongs to Disney, he will be kept on track. So, yeah, seeing that collaboration is interesting.
Alright, so director for AVP was Paul W.S. Anderson. Yeah.
That's right. And did he do Final Destination?
He did a range of things. He did Event Horizon, which I personally believe I loved, and I just, the fact that it is
bonkers.
I think
oh my
that
god.
The Covenant, if they brought Paul W.S. Anderson in for Alien Awakening, like even co-directed with Ridley.
Yes, and they find a black hole, and on the other side there is hell, and David's like, I'm home.
And we see all these
bitches. Yes. Where's my throne?
All the colonists in hypersleep have been egg morphed. It would just be, my heart would stop. I feel like he's the right guy for that.
We have, but this is our professional opinion. The trilogy, the prequel trilogy, will end with a black hole that leads to space hell.
Though, he also has been in charge with movies in the past, such as Mortal Kombat.
Don't you diss Mortal Kombat? It is a masterpiece.
Some of the lines in there are so bad, and the fact that he's the director and allowed people to say those lines in that sort of manner is an arrestable offense. He's also been in charge of the Resident Evil franchise as well, and that, you know, it's kind of jumped the shark. I stopped paying attention after the first couple of Resident Evil movies, even though I really love the game. The movie adaptations leave a lot to be desired. I feel like the message is lost.
I mean, that's video game adaptations in general.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, God, there are so many ideas we've brought up, and they all sound so good. I will, all of them, please, also an alien queen. Can we have that as the cherry on top?
If you do this, there will be no turning back. My creatures shall be set loose to rule this galaxy.
I would love that. I would love, you know what, it would be crazy if they brought Shaw back.
Yeah.
Like they brought Shaw back as some sort of alien queen, but I know he's going to make Daniels the queen. Like, I love Catherine Waterston, and, you know, I understand why they chose her, because she's a lot taller than Noomi Rapace if she was to wear some sort of alien contraption and be some sort of mutation.
You know what's funny? In the, that's true, they might have actually cast her specifically for that. Yeah, it's funny in the Alien Origins, she's described as tiny. I'm like, she's like 6 foot tall. What are you talking about?
Maybe. face.
She's very slender.
She's petite in that sort of way, but tall petite. Oh wow, it's the brothers Strauss, Colin and Greg, that did AVPR.
Oh yeah. Maybe get a director who is has a bit of a better reputation for another AVP movie if they want to do that again.
They did work on the X-Files film. Like, I love the X-Files.
Because that's the X-Files, the one from when was that? About 2012 too, I think.
Yeah, it was a long time back.
It's so forgettable. I think was
1998. 1998. Oh my god.
Oh, so that might be a different movie I'm thinking of then. There's one with Billy Connolly. He's like a blind guy or something.
The film opens like 35,000 BC.
What?
And
I would remember that.
I think you've got to watch it. They start off with like the two caveman hunters, and
which is how they wanted to open.
They encounter large extraterrestrial life in the cave, which is kind of like, I guess, Prometheus.
Yeah, the Ancient Aliens thing. I need to read that Ancient Aliens book because it keeps coming up in all aspects of my life. It's a bit creepy. I guess it's the kind of stuff I'm interested in. So Billy
it all ties into the prequels, I guess. So.
2008 X-Files. I Want to Believe, and it was
that was a different one. Yeah.
Infinitely forgettable.
Yeah, I don't remember that one either, but I do want to rewatch all of the X-Files now that.
I need to go through. I'm going through Star Trek: The Next Generation, so I'm into 80s television right now.
Well, I just finished watching all of the 4 canonical series: Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection. I'm gonna watch Prometheus and Covenant again, but I'm also going through separate material that I think is part of the Bible of Alien, like the inspirational works. So I'm currently reading Lord Jim, which is a very, very old book, but there is a ship in it called the Patna, which is the name of the ship that Bishop rocks up in. Not Robot Bishop, but real Bishop in Alien 3. So yeah, I'm trying to read into that and see how that relates to Alien 3. Going off the subject. So.
I mean, we could tangent all day about alien-related things. That we should probably. I would not mind returning to this podcast should you ever need me.
Yes. I think we could just like flap our gums on just about anything really, because like we're both really deep into the franchise.
Oh yes.
So your final thoughts on Alien Awakening? What will happen?
I am really attached to this idea of a black hole leading to space. But no, realistically, I think it makes sense to do this as a prequel to Covenant. We've got these outstanding elements. So with Prometheus, it was pretty much just Elizabeth and David heading to the Engineer planet, and they did that. They resolved that. So there's no loose threads there. Whereas for Covenant, there's David's transmission. You got Daniels and Tennessee. You've got the colonists. You've got facehuggers. There's the possibility of an alien queen. David keeps going on about that. So yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to see, and there is probably going to be some big war or battle, because Ridley seems to refer to that more than anything in interviews.
Yeah, his talking of the War of the Worlds. He did say 14 months after Covenant he was going to start pre-production of Alien Awakening, and there hasn't been any update or news since then.
Yeah, because I've got I haven't done enough film. So I'm a costume person. I mostly work in theatre, but so I've not done enough films to be part of any union or whatever. But I've got a few contacts who are, and they're always checking out the websites and stuff to see if they've started looking for crew for a possible Alien sequel. So yeah, there was a little bit of buzz, and then it sort of died off. Because I think it's probably because Ridley was saying, "Oh yeah, I definitely want to jump straight to the next," and then obviously other things came up.
Yeah, I don't think he has this schedule in his head.
But yeah, I mean, I will probably be one of the first people to know, just in terms of when they actually go ahead with production.
Cool.
So I will keep you involved.
Yeah, keep us in the loop, because I definitely want to be very close by the whole thing. I might even fly to wherever they're filming.
Yeah, if they film in Australia, I would love to be part of the costume crew. I don't know if it would be feasible for me to travel, to Hollywood or wherever else, but yeah, I mean, if it's Australia and New Zealand, I can do it.
Awesome. Well, we will keep our eyes on that.
It'll be very hard for me to not share or leak information. Oh my god, it'll
NDA, so if you want to keep your
Yes,
job,
I
you
know.
have to.
Yeah, no, I have to be a good boy.
All right, cool. So thank you very much for coming on to the show and discussing with us the different possibilities of what can happen in Alien Awakening. I think, there's definitely a lot of things open. I think that David will end up somehow surviving his encounter, the War of the Worlds. I think he will find a way, whether it's sneaking his AI information onto Mother and then putting himself into the body of another synthetic, maybe even Ash, to make that sort of...
that would be cool.
Yes, make the myth of Hippolyta come true, resurrecting himself from the dead to live again.
Well, is there Ash units? I guess because they didn't recognize Ash as a synthetic, so he must be a custom-made one, right?
Yeah,
And then Bishop, I think, is a more homogenized look, because all the Marines were like, yeah, that's Bishop, he's an android.
Yeah, everyone knew Bishop was an android. Ripley obviously didn't know because she was in stasis for a very long time.
I love the way David says cryostasis.
Yes, he has a certain way about saying certain words, and it just makes me go, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
There is, watching Prometheus again now after the Covenant, I just go, there's something a little, there's an undercurrent of passive aggressiveness at all times. This guy's, he's a bit twitchy.
Yeah, he definitely, at least in the way that they were describing him, Fassbender describes him as, you don't know whether he's intentionally being an asshole or he's just, that's just the way he talks.
I mean, I can relate being autistic. Sometimes my friend's like, oh, sick burn. I'm like, no, I was simply stating a fact. I didn't...
Yeah, my daughter does that thing all the time. I think it's just, just the way she is.
She needs to be on this podcast. I think she has valuable opinions about xenomorphs. Yes. Guys, she has a xenomorph toy, and its name is Darkness.
Yes, it's pretty cool. I'll definitely have to have her on.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention, yes, engineers. We need some bloody resolution with engineers in the third film. I do
love the concept of the engineers. I think it was definitely not utilised as much as it should have been. And kind of like, I guess this is an Australian terminology other people might not get, but it was a bit of a bum steer to have the engineers in the crossing, and then when we watch the movie, you see them completely annihilated, and you're like, that's the end of that.
Yeah, thanks guys, that was really helpful to the plot.
Which leads them to be more mysterious, but at the same time, god damn it. I wanted to see more of their culture. I wanted to see how much they were like us.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And now we're trying to wrap this up, but I keep having other ideas. So what if he didn't annihilate the whole planet? Like maybe there are different continents, so this thing is just isolated to a continent. I mean, yeah, look at Australia. It's so isolated. There's unlikely to be mutagen getting across the ocean. So yeah, maybe Walter wanders the planet and finds, oh yeah, no, there are other engineers. They're fine. They just had to leave this continent because it's so dangerous.
Perhaps.
I'm just throwing out there.
There was some viral pieces that Fox released after Prometheus, which actually indicates that the engineers had experimented on other planets previously and what the results were of releasing the pathogen, and it was pretty much 100% dead. So unfortunately, that may debunk that theory.
Because yeah, I feel like the mutagen is almost like, actually probably the best example is LSD. So obviously everyone knows if you take LSD, you start tripping balls, it's, hallucinations, all that sort of stuff. But if you microdose it, it actually just improves cognitive function and that sort of stuff. But then obviously you could also, on the other extreme, you could overdose. So same thing with mutagen, like on a tiny scale, great, engineer sacrifices himself, you get life on a planet. If you bomb a whole planet, just complete annihilation. There's no life.
Absolutely, and I think there's a possibility that there could be more engineers. There's obviously more than one vessel when they're walking through the engineer city. They can see in the hangar.
I mean, they've clearly spread themselves across
kind of like
the universe,
Wayland Industries had, or Wayland Yutani have, building better worlds. That's what the engineers were doing in a a sense.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
essentially the
they,
same. And then they sue each other.
and then get bought out by Walmart.
Yes, I just had the image of an engineer lawyer wearing a giant, two-piece suit.
Possibly a
tie.
toupee.
Yes, like Vin Diesel.
Would it be like a alien queen as a judge, like order in the court, and then instead of
Yes.
having like the gavel, she like uses it in her mouth, like boom, like hit the hit the desk. Anyway, there's enough of crack talk here.
Yeah, we're just bullshitting now. Why are you people still listening? What are you doing here?
Yes.
Credits rolled.
Alright, we'll wrap this up. So, that's what our theories are on Alien Awakening. We've got a couple of people contributing from Alien Prequel Paradise as well to say what they think will happen in the next movie. And, yeah, I think that's it. Alright, let's wrap this up. Thank you, Courtney.
Listen to the next episode also, and subscribe and stuff.
You can subscribe to my blog. Have a listen to Prometheus Minute podcast. I will make sure I will post a link to that on my Yutani blog. And a link to all of the other stuff that we've discussed, like the viral media of the Davidson recall, the experimentation on the planet, the viral information released by Fox, and we'll type down what we think about what will happen in the sequel. And we would like to hear from you, your theories as well, as to what you think will happen. Just jump onto yutani.blog and reply to the podcast post. And hey, maybe we'll have you on one of our shows in the future. Alright, thank you very much. You've been listening to Courtney and to Clara, that's me, Mother. And this is us signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, this is Lance Solo from the UK. In regards to a Covenant sequel, I just hope that they continue with the story they set out in Prometheus, David 8's development and his malfunctioning logic that he has. I'm hoping to see some sort of relation to the Alien Queen, as well as some new designs as well, some more beasts to pour over. That would be good. I'm hoping that it's not going to be straight out gung-ho like Aliens. I want it to continue with the intelligent science fiction of what we've seen so far.
This is colony ship Covenant, reporting. All crew members apart from Daniels in Tennessee tragically perished in a solar flare incident. All colonists in hypersleep remain intact and undisturbed, on course for Orgai 6. Hopefully this transmission will reach the network and be relayed in 6 years.
You can now support Yutani Podcast on Patreon and subscribe to yutani.blog to stay up to date.